Hello, you're watching World Talks on TVP World. My name is Sasha Farbach. Poland's President Karol Nawrocki has vetoed legislation implementing the EU's Digital Services Act, arguing that it would lead to, according to him, administrative censorship by allowing state officials to decide what content may remain online. Now, the decision has halted Poland's enforcement of the EU's flagship digital law, drawing criticism from the government and Brussels, and placing the country among a small group of member states facing possible EU penalties. Now, to discuss it further, we're joined in the studio by Jakub Szymik, founder of CEE Digital Democracy Watch. Thanks for coming by.
Hello, Sasha.
Let's recap with this. President Nawrocki calls this EU law Orwellian. Give us a little take on what it really does. It took quite a while to be enforced, isn't it? So tell us why it's so important.
Yes, that's true. The law entered into action in 2024 across the whole European Union with additional deadlines for national implementations. Most of the European Union countries already appointed their offices that will be responsible for enforcing the law. One thing, obviously, is the fact of taking down the illegal content. Each country can decide what illegal content means for them. So this is how the law is being structured to include the national perspective in how it's being implemented across the EU. But also at the same time, the Brussels is doing the direct enforcement of this legislation and is able to fine specific platforms, the biggest, very large online platforms, if they don't live up to the expectations that the law is setting up for them. A recent example of this is a fine that was appointed towards X or Twitter about the fact that they misled their users when it comes to verification of the accounts or transparency of advertising.
Mm-hmm. And X and Twitter, I mean, that's Elon Musk, and we'll get to that point in a little moment. So let's look at the state of play as well. The latest is that President Nawrocki has vetoed this law. Effectively, he's the only one in the European Union of a member state where this has not gone forward. What do you expect? The reasoning that he provides, is that justified? Is this, does he gain from this? Who is the winner from this opposition? And what's next in your mind?
I do believe that some version of this legislation will pass after all. What the presidential palace is saying is that they should, they expect that a new bill will be voted through in 2 months. I don't think this is very realistic, but let's hope that this is something that Polish government and the presidential palace will be able to push through. Obviously, given that this is implementation of EU legislation, I expect that Polish government and Polish offices will be looking to implement this again. As you mentioned, there is expectation of potential penalties coming from the EU. And during the press conference, Minister Standerski, the junior minister for digital affairs, said that it's possible that the accrued fines by now might be around €9.5 million, and he's looking to put those fines into the president's budget. When it comes to who is the winner or where the decision towards the veto comes from, obviously the digital governance issues are quite explosive issues nationally. Lots of the people believe that the freedom of expression is being limited for them because it's very difficult to understand how the information is being distributed online and who actually makes those types of decisions. But also it plays into the broader international picture of very strong opposition towards EU legislation that is being mounted by the United States administration.
Mm-hmm. And also looking at the potential penalties and fines that Poland would have to pay if all this continues. Is Poland the only country as a member state in the EU that's not been enforcing this? Are there others? I think there might be other similar. Are there similar cases?
Yes, there are 4 other countries in the EU that are also being investigated, not because they didn't implement the legislation at all, but because they didn't manage to enforce their national office, their digital services coordinator properly, and there are questions being asked to those countries. Just for clarity, in Poland, UKE, which is Office for National Electronic communications, was also appointed very basic powers by the means of government regulation. Government expected that it will be difficult to push through with the bill, and they empowered the local digital services coordinator, the DSC, as it's called in the DSA slang, to be able to do basic things such as representing Poland in the international meetings, or be able to observe the meetings of similar offices from other countries. So some very basic provisions are already being implemented, but for full implementation, a proper statute is needed.
Mm-hmm. And as far as I think we're concerned here, Poland is still the only outlier as far as the potential penalty goes.
Yeah.
It's not a done deal yet. Looking also as what we've just said, who gains out of this delay is likely the big platforms. If we're looking at Elon Musk's X, that's Twitter. If we're looking at other big platforms, big tech, let's look at that link also. I mean, there's a reason President Nawrocki said this is Orwellian. This comes as an argument about free speech limitations. How much is that linked to MAGA, linked to the United States, linked to Trump's circle? Is he hoping for some kind of support in all this?
This is the position that MAGA network is taking globally, and they are seeing all of the EU or UK tech regulation as a threat to how they build their power. But the criticism towards how the content is being distributed online comes from left and right, exactly the same. Lots of the NGOs and lots of the political groups are saying that if the content that they are sharing is in some way polarizing or touching upon issues that might not be pleasure to look at, it's being shadow banned, is being demolished. So I would say that this is a sentiment that is visible across all spaces of political spectrum, but what this regulation actually proposed for Polish users is to have an actual contact point in Poland where the users can flag any issues of mismoderation of their content and ask the government and the court for official interpretation of what's happening. Mm-hmm. So instead of very automated processes that we have across on the platforms only, the users would be able to have some support from the state or from the courts to make their situation a bit clearer. Mm-hmm. This is something that other countries already proposed to their citizens because of the Digital Services Act, and Polish citizens don't have this opportunity yet, even though the Digital Services Act is also covering Polish territories. So this is a gap between what we're allowed to do and what the Brussels and big platforms are allowed to do in Poland.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like with the DSA, there's a necessary component that at the end of the day also is about citizens being safer, about as content is just, we're inundated with this all the time. One thing I'm curious about, I mean, we've seen this now more and more, more algorithms, more AI, deepfakes, you name it, everything, but also Poland very much in the center trying to counter Russian disinformation, disinformation generally from different countries, be they state actors, etc. With this kind of veto and this kind of resistance from the presidency, how does that impact that fight to, let's say, make sure that content is professional, that it's not fake? How do you interpret this?
I agree with what you're saying, and I hear your question. The national states have very limited capacities of impacting what's happening on the platforms themselves. The people who are against any state intervention into the type of content that is being distributed on those platforms, they will overblown smaller situations, the suggestions by the state or flagging of specific content, and make it look like the state is intervening on a very big scale. It is true that Poland, even though we are very focused as a country on fighting the Russian disinfo and also to bringing the story internationally and to explaining to the Western partners how important of an issue this is, still doesn't have very solid legal ways of taking down content or flagging disinformation like this, and the DSA would definitely support with that.
So in your view then, is this something necessary or supplemental? Is the DSA in all this?
I think this is a crucial piece, and the good news here is that Digital Services Act is already active in Poland because of the direct enforcement by Brussels. And this is something that Polish Ministry of Digital Affairs did recently. They flagged the TikTok deepfakes about Polexit to the European Commission for further investigation. This is very similar to the actions that we're taking around Romanian elections. It's good that there is possibility of investigating what happens on the platforms a bit deeper.
All right, so it may be a veto now, but some of those provisions are already in effect.
Exactly.
Thanks for clearing all that up and giving us an explanation. Our guest in studio here, Jakub Szymik from Digital Democracy Watch. Thank you.
Exactly.
And thank you for watching. That concludes World Talks, but stay right here on TVP World for more. Goodbye.